What if I told you that some of the most mysterious stories of time travel don't come from science fiction or ancient mythology, but from real spiritual figures who walked this earth? Long before Einstein's theories and Hollywood's fantasies, Sufi mystics whispered of journeys beyond the boundaries of time. They didn't build machines. They didn't need wormholes. Their vessel was the soul. Their method, divine remembrance, deep meditation, and surrender to the unseen. Across centuries, stories emerge, almost too strange to believe. A man sits in stillness and returns with visions of events yet to come. Another collapses into a trance, only to wake with knowledge of things long past, or not yet born. Abu Yazid al-Bistami, the wild mystic of Persia, claimed to have traveled outside his body, rising beyond time itself. He spoke of witnessing realities no mind could fully contain, events unfolding across timelines, as if past, present, and future were pages in a single open book. Ibn Arabi, the great Andalusian master, wrote of spiritual journeys that defied time altogether. He described realms where cause and effect dissolve, and where glimpses of the future were granted not through magic, but through alignment with divine will. Shams Tabrizi, the fire behind Rumi's flame, hinted at even deeper mysteries. In his cryptic sayings, he spoke of moments outside of time, moments that could stretch like eternity or vanish in a blink, where destiny could be seen, touched, perhaps even changed. And then there's Abdul Qadir Jilani, whose legends speak of appearing in multiple places at once, of knowing what had not yet occurred, and of commanding forces no one dared to name aloud. Are these merely poetic metaphors? Symbolic dreams of mystics lost in ecstasy? Or were these saints uncovering something that modern science is only beginning to understand? What if these journeys weren't hallucinations, but real experiences, accessible through states of consciousness we've long forgotten? And here's the most curious part. As modern physicists explore the strange nature of time, as quantum scientists question what's real and what's imagined, the ancient Sufi texts start to sound less like spiritual poetry and more like glimpses of a deeper truth. In this video, we'll explore the incredible stories of Sufi masters who may have pierced the veil of time. We'll look at their writings, their visions, and what their experiences could mean for us today. Are you ready to travel through time, not with machines, but with the forgotten powers of the human soul? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The 5 Saints Who Danced with Time. Throughout history, there have been stories, whispers really, about individuals who seem to step outside the bounds of time. Not magicians, not scientists, but mystics. And among them, the Sufi saints stood in a league of their own. Not content with mere rituals or surface beliefs, they plunged into the very fabric of reality, seeking something most people would never dare to touch, the truth behind the veil. But what if their journeys were more than metaphor? What if some of them actually glimpsed the future, walked through the past, or even paused time itself? In this chapter, we'll meet 5 Sufi masters, each shrouded in legend, each with stories that hint at something far deeper than symbolic wisdom. These weren't just seekers of truth. They may have been time walkers, but how can that be? Is it truly possible for the soul to slip through the cracks of linear time? Can a human heart, purified, surrendered, become a vessel for timeless truth? If so, then who were these souls? Who are the ones who reached beyond the veil of time itself? Let us begin with 5 such majestic masters, each carrying a story that bends reason and whispers of a reality far beyond the one we think we know. Abu Yazid al-Bistami, rahimahullah, the mystic of infinite ascension. Abu Yazid didn't speak of time the way ordinary men do. He claimed that in his deepest states of ecstasy, he traveled beyond time, beyond form, into what he called the station of annihilation. He once said, "I made 4 ascensions, and in each I left behind thousands of veils, and yet I had not yet reached the beginning of truth." Was Abu Yazid al-Bistami speaking in parable or describing a multidimensional journey? Some traditions say he entered a state where all timelines collapsed, and in a single breath he could witness the unfolding of human history, as if reading from a cosmic script. Ibn Arabi, rahimahullah, the traveler of realms. Often called the greatest sheikh, Ibn Arabi's writings remain some of the most complex and mystical in all of Islamic thought. But buried within his poetic language are fragments of something even more profound. Ibn Arabi described dreams, no, visions, where he traveled to distant lands he'd never seen, and then visited them in waking life years later, exactly as he saw. He wrote of futuhat, openings in the soul, where time itself could be transcended. He once claimed to have seen the Day of Judgment, not as a prophecy, but as something he witnessed firsthand. He wrote, "There is no time but now, and in the now, all things are present." Modern thinkers would call this non-linear time. To Ibn Arabi, it was simply truth unveiled. Shams Tabrizi, rahimahullah, the flame that burned through time. The enigmatic teacher of Rumi, a man who appeared and disappeared like a shadow in history. Some say Shams arrived in Konya from nowhere, no record, no background, just presence. But his knowledge was terrifyingly deep. He spoke of parallel realities, infinite versions of the self, and cosmic patterns long before such ideas had names. According to one legend, Shams once looked into the eyes of a dying man and said, "Your death is already behind you. You just haven't arrived there yet." To his closest disciples, he hinted that every moment contains echoes of the future, and that those who silence the mind can hear them. Then one day, Shams vanished. Some say he died. Others believe he simply stepped out of this timeline. Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, rahimahullah, the guardian of the hidden. A figure of great authority in the Sufi world, Abdul Qadir al-Jilani wasn't just known for spiritual wisdom, but for miracles that defied time and space. Multiple reports across centuries tell of him appearing in 2 places at once, healing people in Baghdad while giving sermons miles away. Some followers describe seeing him surrounded by a golden light that distorted time, where minutes felt like hours and days passed like seconds. But Abdul Qadir never took credit. He said, "It is not I who acts, it is he." He warned that these gifts were not for spectacle, but for service, and that those who chased time itself would lose it forever. But what kind of force was he tapping into? Could it be that he had unlocked the sacred rhythms of the universe? Junaid al-Baghdadi, rahimahullah, the saint between worlds. Junaid al-Baghdadi was not known for wild miracles or cryptic visions. Instead, he was the master of balance, fully present in this world, yet deeply attuned to the next. He taught his students to walk the path of inner silence, for it is in silence, he said, that the soul begins to hear the truths beyond time. One of his most famous sayings was, "The water takes on the color of the cup it's in." A simple image, but behind it lies a profound truth. Reality bends to the consciousness that perceives it. Junaid hinted that true time travel wasn't about bending clocks or jumping centuries. It was about transforming the self until one could see all of time as a single mirror. And some say he did. These 5 masters didn't speak of time the way we do. To them, it wasn't a ticking clock. It was a veil that could be lifted by divine love, unwavering discipline, and inner stillness. But the question remains, did they truly see across time, or were they simply touching the eternal? In the next chapter, we'll dive into the whispers of forbidden knowledge and explore why these secrets have remained buried until now. Chapter 2. Abu Yazid al-Bistami, rahimahullah, the traveler of infinite realms. What happens when a soul burns so brightly that the boundaries of this world can no longer contain it? Abu Yazid al-Bistami, one of the most enigmatic Sufi saints, was not just a mystic, but a traveler of infinite realms. To his followers, he was a man who dissolved the veil between the seen and the unseen. To others, he was a mystery that defied explanation. Born in Persia in the 9th century, he spoke not of this world, but of the alam al-malakut, the spiritual realm that coexists with our reality, hidden from ordinary sight. But for Abu Yazid al-Bistami, this hidden world was not theory. It was his experience. What could that mean? A metaphor? A vision? Or something far more literal? He often described leaving his body, entering states where time collapsed and his soul moved freely across dimensions. In these states, he claimed to have witnessed divine realities, to have conversed with celestial beings, and even to have encountered layers of existence beyond human comprehension. He would disappear into meditation for days, sometimes weeks, only to return with eyes burning like he had seen eternity itself. And what he brought back were fragments of a truth that stunned even the wisest of scholars. He spoke of mirage of the soul, not the physical ascension of the prophet alone, but a spiritual ascension available to any human being, if they were willing to surrender completely. His travels were not just inward. Many stories suggest he visited places far from his homeland, appearing in multiple locations, leaving behind tales of miraculous healings, visions, and predictions that came true with eerie precision. Some scholars believe Abu Yazid al-Bistami may have had access to what modern mystics call the Akashic records, a timeless archive of all that has happened, is happening, and will happen. Others say he pierced through the veil of time, not metaphorically, but literally. In altered states of consciousness, he claimed to witness the end of days, the resurrection of souls, and the unfolding of histories yet to occur. Was he hallucinating? Or had he tapped into something science is only now beginning to grasp? But here's the question. If Abu Yazid al-Bistami could do this in the 9th century, what did he discover? And why was this knowledge hidden? Could it be that he was trying to protect us? Or was he leaving behind clues for those of us ready to walk the same path? Chapter 3. Ibn Arabi, rahimahullah, the architect of time and the multiverse. If Abu Yazid al-Bistami cracked open the door to other dimensions, Ibn Arabi built a palace inside, known as Sheikh al-Akbar, the greatest master. Ibn Arabi was not merely a mystic. He was a philosopher, a scientist of the soul, and perhaps one of the earliest minds to conceptualize what we today call the multiverse. Born in 12th century Andalusia, Ibn Arabi's writings speak of realities layered upon realities, each vibrating at different frequencies, each governed by its own laws, and all interconnected through the divine. But perhaps his most startling claim: that time is not linear. To Ibn Arabi, time was like a circle, or more accurately, like a spiral, ever evolving and looping back upon itself. He described events as already existing in a higher realm, what he called the realm of command, before they unfolded in the physical world. He believed that prophets, saints, and deeply awakened beings could access this realm, glimpsing the future, understanding the past, and walking through the present like a lucid dream. And he didn't just theorize it, he lived it. In his writings, Ibn Arabi recounted dreams and visions in which he was transported to different points in history. In one instance, he described meeting Jesus, not metaphorically, but in what he called a state beyond time, where the spirits of enlightened beings commune regardless of their era. He also claimed to have visited Mecca, not just physically but spiritually, at a time when it was empty, shining, and filled with a cosmic light. How could a 12th century man describe concepts now echoed in quantum physics and parallel timelines? Some say Ibn Arabi had accessed the al-Lauh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet where all events past, present, and future are written. Others believe he tapped into the source code of creation, a divine blueprint that modern science still struggles to name. He even spoke of the imaginal world, a dimension between the material and the spiritual, where thoughts take form and visions have power, a place not imaginary but more real than the physical, a kind of interdimensional hallway. Could this be what today's scientists refer to when they explore the quantum field or the zero-point energy realm? What makes Ibn Arabi truly remarkable is that he didn't hoard this knowledge. He wrote it down, thousands of pages of insights, visions, and teachings. And yet, the depth of his work is so vast that even today, only fragments are fully understood. Many believe that hidden in his writings are codes, keys to higher realities, waiting for the right consciousness to awaken them. But here's the mystery. Why was such a man with such knowledge not globally known like Einstein or Newton? Perhaps because he didn't speak in equations, but in poetry, parables, and prophecies. Perhaps because his truth was meant not for the mind alone, but for the soul. And perhaps because what he discovered was too powerful, too sacred, to be misused by an unprepared world. So, the question remains, if Ibn Arabi mapped out the architecture of time, if he discovered a way to move through realities, if he met beings across eras and saw events before they happened, then what else lies hidden in his teachings? And are we, today, finally waking up to what he already knew centuries ago? Chapter 4. Shams Tabrizi, Rahimahullah, the flame that burned through time. Who was Shams Tabrizi? To many, he was simply the teacher of Jalaluddin Rumi, but to those who look deeper, he was a cosmic flame, a being who defied time, logic, and even the boundaries of life and death. Shams didn't just teach Rumi, he awakened him, and not through sermons or lectures, but through presence. His energy alone shattered illusions. His words were like lightning bolts, cutting through the veils that cloud human perception. But where did this man come from? And where did he go? Some accounts describe Shams as a wandering dervish, always appearing when least expected, always disappearing without a trace. Others claim he was not entirely human, but a being sent from a higher realm to ignite the hearts of those ready to awaken. There are stories, strange, beautiful, even unsettling. It is said that when Shams entered a city, clocks stopped, birds grew silent. Time itself seemed to pause, as if reality had to make room for him. There are ancient Persian texts, rare, cryptic, where Sufi scholars speak of Shams reappearing in different times, in dreams, in visions, in other lifetimes, as if he had never left. Could it be that Shams had mastered the art of time travel, not through machines, but through spiritual elevation? He often spoke of the eternal now, a state beyond past and future. To Shams, enlightenment wasn't a goal. It was a remembering of something we already are. He saw time as a fabric woven by consciousness, and the more conscious one becomes, the more access they gain to different threads of that fabric. Modern mystics now speak of quantum entanglement, parallel lives, and sliding timelines. But Shams was already living these truths centuries ago. And here's what's even more intriguing. After Shams, Rumi transformed. He wrote over 70,000 verses, many of them inspired by visions of Shams, years after his disappearance. Was Rumi receiving these words through memory, or was he still communicating with Shams across time? Some researchers believe their bond was so powerful, so energetically aligned, that it created a kind of interdimensional bridge, a spiritual wormhole, allowing wisdom to flow between realms. Shams once said, "Don't seek me on the earth. I am not of clay. Seek me in the fire, and if you are brave, in the lightning." These weren't just poetic metaphors. They were coordinates, clues to a deeper reality few dare to touch. So, who was Shams Tabrizi? A mystic? A traveler between worlds? Or a mirror sent to remind us of the divine fire sleeping inside each of us? Maybe the better question is this: is Shams still here, burning quietly at the edges of our dreams, waiting for us to become flames too? Chapter 5. Abdul Qadir Jilani, Rahimahullah, the saint who bent the laws of reality. In the heart of 12th century Baghdad, a man walked the earth whose presence could calm storms, whose prayers healed the sick, and whose words reshaped lives. His name was Abdul Qadir Jilani, a name that still echoes through the spiritual corridors of time. To many, he was a saint. To his followers, he was the Sultan of the saints. But those who truly studied him knew there was something more. It is said that he could be in two places at once, that his spiritual vision could see across continents, that he commanded the jinn, spoke with angels, and traversed the realms of the unseen like we walk through open fields. Was this the product of myth or mastery? According to historical records and ancient manuscripts preserved by his students, Abdul Qadir Jilani had achieved such a level of spiritual purity that time, space, and matter no longer bound him. There's one account, chronicled by his own disciples, that tells of a moment when he raised his hands in prayer and the wind changed direction. Another where a man fell dead at his feet, only to be revived moments later by a single whispered word from the saint. But perhaps most fascinating is this. He often spoke of hal, a spiritual state in which the soul becomes unshackled from linear time. In this state, he claimed, one could access the divine record, the place where all past, present, and future events already exist. al-Mahfuz, the protected tablet. This wasn't a metaphor. To him, it was real. He described it as a cosmic interface, a library of destinies written not in ink, but in pure light. Before we continue, if you felt drawn in by these timeless stories, if these mysteries awaken something deep inside you, make sure to subscribe to Manar al-Madina and join us as we continue uncovering these hidden truths. There's so much more waiting to be revealed, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Back to Abdul Qadir Jilani. His teachings were not just spiritual, they were alchemical. He taught that when the ego is fully dissolved, the human being becomes a vessel for divine command, able to bend the rules of reality, not through force, but through surrender. There's one legendary tale of Jilani rescuing a disciple, not by traveling across the desert, but by appearing instantly, as if he had folded space around him. When questioned, he simply said, "There is no distance between those who are near to Allah." And here's something that may surprise you. Some modern physicists now theorize that at the subatomic level, space and time are not fixed. They can stretch, bend, or even disappear entirely under certain quantum conditions. Could it be that Abdul Qadir Jilani had discovered these principles long before science caught up? Though his body returned to the earth, his presence never truly faded. Across continents and generations, thousands of spiritual paths still carry his name, his teachings, his light. In the heart of Baghdad, his shrine stands, not just as a monument, but as a living current. People say time slows there. It feels sacred, alive. Maybe that's not just imagination. Maybe, like the great mystics before him, he remains close, not in form, but in essence, watching over those brave enough to let go of the world and step into something deeper, not just seekers of knowledge, but of transformation. And perhaps, if your heart is open, he's waiting for you too. Chapter 6. Junaid al-Baghdadi, rahimahullah, the master of the silent transmission. In the golden age of Islamic mysticism, before the rise of grand Sufi orders and famous shrines, there was a man whose silence taught louder than sermons, whose gaze alone could pierce the illusions of this world. He was Junaid al-Baghdadi, the quiet master, the philosopher of the soul, and the man many call the father of sober Sufism. Junaid's path wasn't one of spectacle or miraculous feats. He didn't call storms or walk on water. His power was subtler, more elusive, and perhaps more dangerous. He taught that the greatest transformations happen not in ecstasy, but in stillness, not in visions, but in presence, that the divine whispers not in fire or thunder, but in the space between thoughts. But that's not to say Junaid al-Baghdadi wasn't touched by the unseen. There are accounts of him entering such deep states of spiritual focus, fana, the annihilation of the self, that time ceased to exist for him. He would remain motionless for hours, eyes half closed, while his consciousness seemed to slip into another realm. One disciple once asked, "Master, where do you go during these long silences?" Junaid replied only, "I return to where I never left." Mystics and scholars alike have debated what this meant. Some say he was referring to the primordial state of the soul, a place beyond time, before birth, before form. Others believe he had gained access to a kind of timeless dimension, where the self merges into the divine and glimpses the eternal now. Here's where it gets deeper. Modern spiritual researchers have drawn parallels between his teachings and the phenomenon known in quantum psychology as non-local consciousness. The idea that awareness doesn't reside in the brain, but exists outside space and time, and the mind merely tunes into it, like a radio. Could it be that Junaid al-Baghdadi had already mastered this tuning centuries ago? He spoke rarely about his inner experiences, but when he did, his words were like encrypted codes. "There is no veil between you and the truth," he once said, "only the idea that there is." To many, this was a spiritual metaphor, but to his closest followers, it was a clue, a hint that the boundaries between dimensions, timelines, and selves were far thinner than most dared to believe. There's one legendary tale where a disciple knocked on his door for hours, seeking answers. When Junaid al-Baghdadi finally opened it, he simply said, "The one you seek has been knocking from the inside." It sounds poetic, but what if he wasn't speaking metaphorically? Some suggest that Junaid's teachings implied the soul itself was multidimensional, that each of us exists in more than one realm at once, that our dreams, intuitions, and déjà vu moments are echoes from these parallel selves. His method was never about showing miracles. It was about becoming the miracle. By emptying the self of ego, distraction, and illusion, Junaid believed the soul could return to its original form, a form that knows no time, no fear, no separation. Even today, his teachings ripple across centuries. The great Sufi orders, Qadiriyya, Naqshbandiyya, Chishtiya, all trace some of their spiritual DNA back to Junaid al-Baghdadi. He may not have spoken of time travel, but he lived the principles of it. By mastering the present moment, he dissolved the grip of time itself. So the question now is, what happens when silence becomes a doorway and stillness becomes a passage? Could you walk through? Would you be willing to give up the noise of the world To hear what only the soul can hear? Could you sit long enough in the silence to feel the presence that never left? Because the true journey doesn't begin with movement. It begins when your heart feels peace and the mind becomes silent. Chapter 7. What did the Sufis discover about time? Did the Sufi mystics truly unlock the secrets of time? Or were they simply gifted with visions we still can't explain? As we've seen, their experiences weren't metaphorical riddles or wild imaginations. They were profound, often amazing journeys into something far beyond ordinary perception. Abu Yazid al-Bistami spoke of ascending through realms faster than thought itself. Ibn Arabi described realities stacked like veils, each one containing its own timeline. Tabrizi hinted at truths that could shatter the mind unless the soul was ready. Abdul Qadir al-Jilani moved through dimensions while fully conscious, returning with knowledge not yet known to the world. And Junaid al-Baghdadi reminded us of humility, that even if we touched eternity, it should never make us arrogant. So, what did they discover about time? Maybe time is not a straight line. Maybe it spirals, folds, and echoes. Maybe the future already exists, and the past is never really gone. Maybe the soul, once purified, can step outside the illusion entirely and witness it all. These are not just ancient teachings. They are warnings, invitations, clues for the human being. And as modern science edges closer to the same thresholds, through AI, quantum physics, and consciousness studies, perhaps we are rediscovering what the Sufis always knew, or perhaps we're standing at a door they never wanted opened too soon. If this journey awakened something in you, let us know in the comments. Would you like to dive deeper into Sufi time travel in part 2? There are still many stories left untold, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Manar al-Madina. Join our growing circle of seekers, curious minds, open hearts, ready to lift the veil one mystery at a time. This is not the end. It's just the beginning. Stay curious, stay open. The next revelation is closer than you think.